Welcome back. It is Ralph Rubino here with Heart to Heart Financial. We are here for our third and final episode of this mini series with Alecia Anderson from the Digital Main Street program through the Huron Economical Development. And we are going to move on in our series where we have had Alecia plugging in her information into her new success plan so we can get a feel for where she is now, what she's doing, and where she is heading. She's got a few shopping habits. We're just getting past the Christmas break. So if you haven't checked out episodes 1 and 2, I highly recommend you do so. And today is going to be our little bit of a summary and wrap up of what we have been doing. We're going to look at Alecia's retirement, where she is on pace to get to now, and maybe some tweaks that we can make, as well as we're going to look at some of her daily spending now that she's had a couple of weeks of having the plan and logging different purchases and things like that. So we're going to get right into it. And Alecia, anything that you want to start us off with before we get into our screen share?
I will say I'm really excited about this episode because we're going to talk and get into the nitty-gritty of retirement. So I'm excited to learn more about what I need to do to get me there. Because we've talked about in episode 1 and 2 how desperately I would like to retire, at 60, 65. And not be working till I'm 80. So help me, Ralph.
All right. Well, here we go. We're going to get into that right now, and we're going to have a look at where you're at and where you are headed. So we are jumping right into it here. We are into the retirement screen of Alecia's success plan. So just to rehash, we have a couple things in here. What her partner, Tony, is contributing to his benefit plan, how much his benefit plan is going to pay him at retirement, which is around $4,000 a month. And that they would like to retire ideally around age 60 with about 50% of their income. So as I've mentioned in previous videos, different screens that we're on always have these related reports over on the left-hand side. So on this screen, the related report that we're going to look at is we're going to look at her retirement needs and her retirement accelerator. So I'm going to jump into the accelerator first because it's got a little bit more information on it. I'm going to scroll up here and look at how much is unbudgeted money, what some of the parameters are for retirement. But this is a game I play with any of the families I sit down with. I usually ask both partners to give me a guess as to how much money they think they're going to need at retirement. And, I've gotten numbers from as little as a couple $100,000 to as much as $7-8 million. People a lot of the time don't really know. And I would ask Tony and Alecia this question, but since Tony isn't with us, I'm going to ask Alecia. So what do you think that number is that you guys would need combined in order to retire based on what you told me? 50% of your income at age 60.
This is, again, we've talked about this before, the whole notion of like money, and nobody wants to talk about it. And I feel like part of it is because they're so scared. Like, will I have enough money? This is a wild guess, but I would say somewhere between like 1.5 or $2 million. And it's going to break my heart if that is too little. So bring it.
Okay. Well, that is a very reasonable guess. I will put it that way.
Okay.
I always get a little bit of a chuckle when someone says, oh yeah, if I have like $100,000 or $2, I should be okay. Well, it just depends when you want to retire and what type of retirement you want to have.
Right.
That being said, let's scroll down here and see what that need is. So we're going to come back to this where we can change some of these parameters, but let's scroll down and see what that number is. So drum roll, please. You had said 1.5-ish. And there we go. So it shows how much I will need is going to be right here. So 1.95 is what based on what you had told me, what your need's going to be. The next little circle here is how much you will have. So based on what you're doing right now, you are on pace to have around 400,000, which is going to leave you with a shortfall of around 1.5, which would result in you having a 7-year retirement rather than a 30-year or a 15-year or a 20-year retirement. So if we're basing this on 60, retiring at 60,
yes,
you plan to live to 70 and hopefully much further beyond, we're going to maybe need to make a couple adjustments. Does that sound about right?
Heartbreaking, but right.
Well, that is a very common response. And the way that I look at that is you've gotten to this point without really having a plan.
Yes.
So I commend you guys for being on path to have $400,000. Like that is no small amount of money. And I don't want you to think that based on what the need is. So you guys are doing a very good job of getting, something there for your retirement. Now we're going to do it with a little bit more power behind it, with a little bit more of a plan, and we're going to, target it a little bit more. So let's have a look at what we could maybe do to change that. So the nice thing about the Retirement Accelerator is it shows what your needs are based on how everything's set right now. And then this is what's going to change as we change some of the parameters when I scroll back up. So let's look at that. Let's look at a few of these things here quickly. So right now you had said that you wanted to have a combined monthly percentage of your income at 50%. So we have that at 50% of what you're bringing in now. So right now you bring in 11.5 is how much comes into your house every single month. And I don't want, just to quickly do the math on that, 11.5 is a household income of around 138,000, I think it was. So, that's pretty median income. That's just over, 65, 70,000 a person. And that's where we can start to see, okay, well, 50% of that today is $5,750. But with inflation, because you're wanting to retire at 60, which is amount of years from now at 20 years with inflation, we know that $5,700 20 years ago is not worth the same as it is today. So with that, we know that that's actually going to be closer to $9,500 by the time you're 60 and how much you're really going to need at that point. So those are based on the parameters that we had there. What you have right now in your total investment is around $56,000. Combined monthly savings, you guys are doing $500 into there. Your investments, rate of return, as we touched on in one of our earlier videos, on average, all of your investments are making around 4.6%. And then the rate of inflation at 2.5%, which is arguable on that number. It's constantly changing, but we're going to stick at that for argument's sake today. So what changes could we make? Well, first thing, you could work for longer. Maybe we don't want to do that right away.
Could we call that a non-negotiable?
We could call it a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do otherwise. All right, let's look at this first.
All right.
So let's first off, let's say, okay, I feel like maybe we could do a little bit more with our investments, maybe take on a little bit more risk, maybe find a different avenue to get that rate of return up a little bit. A lot of the portfolios that I look at, whether they're people's bank investments, personal investments, or investments they do with myself, I try and average them out at around 7 to 10% is kind of that wheelhouse. That's where we want to be getting some real growth with that money. Anything over and above that is fantastic. And of course, we have portfolios that make 15, 20%, but generally not all your eggs are in that basket. So let's get this up a little bit to more of that median number. So let's say around 8%. So we're going to double the rate of return on your investments.
Okay.
Let's see what kind of change that makes. So I'm going to scroll down quick. Okay, so before you had 405, now you're on pace to have 570. So we just made you potentially $170,000 by simply taking on potentially a little bit more risk. And if the market, cooperates, we're going to see some growth there. So we already added 2 years to that retirement. Before you're on pace for 7, now you're on pace for 9. Starting to feel better?
Yes.
Next thing we're going to do, we know right now that you've got $839 of unbudgeted money. And this is without taking into consideration some of the consolidations we looked at, where we freed up another couple $100, so on and so forth. So if retirement is a realistic goal and that 60 is maybe a number you don't want to change too much, let's look at maybe adding a little bit more to how much you're saving on your retirement. Does that sound fair?
Fair.
Awesome. So let's say we're going to take $350 of that $839 that you had left over. So let's take it from $500 up to $850. So now we've increased how much you guys are saving.
Okay.
So that's $175 extra each for yourself and for Tony. And we've increased your rate of return. Okay. Let's now see where we're at. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. That little bit of increased amount into your savings adds a pretty substantial amount of money into that retirement plan. We had got you from 400 to 550-ish. Now we've got you upwards of 770,000. So now we're into a 12-year retirement. Now you're into your 70s. So now we're starting to cook here a little bit.
Love it.
Great. So now we're going to touch on the non-negotiable part. Now we're going to maybe look at, okay, we could touch on the 60 and how long, we're maybe working a little bit longer. But let's say, maybe you think, okay, well, if all my debt's gone and you help me get that paid off in the next 20 years, maybe we only need 40% of our income. Now, this is a pretty drastic change. Let's see what kind of change that makes. Okay, takes it down to $7,500 a month. So in 20 years, do you think you'd survive on 7,500? If you're budgeting well and you're looking at the numbers and tracking everything, could be feasible. So now we're not just affecting your retirement path, we're affecting the retirement need more than anything. So we've actually, that need would drop from 1.9 down to 1.2. So we added 4 more years to retirement without changing this number of 777. We actually dropped how much you're going to need, how much you're actually going to require at retirement. Questions, thoughts?
So I will say, the first thing that I really appreciate is that what's included is what it will look like, 9 years from now, 10 years from now. I think that's really important to understand that, because it's not going to be the same. So that I appreciate. I also love that we've talked about this before, that we can play with the numbers and figure out what's going to work best for you as an individual, or you and your family, what you and your partner, whatever that looks like. And it seems feasible, which is great. Yes. And as long as a program like this is in existence with the Success Plan, you should be able to budget properly and with ease. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're going to touch on that budgeting in a minute here. So stay tuned. But let's neutralize this number. Let's make this an even keel across the board. How's that sound?
Love it.
Okay. So let's keep this at 40. Let's change the non-negotiable just to see.
To 65.
If you had to work to 65, how does that look? Are you ready?
I was going to say, if I retire at 60 and work part-time,
okay,
I could be open to that.
Okay, so let's look at if you worked, this is working full-time to 65, but let's see, because part-time is an option too, one of you or whatever. So now we've completely changed your retirement. Now you're working a few more extra years. Your need won't be quite as much. You'll have even less debt if you work a little bit longer, ideally. You'll have more time to save. That amount that you're going to have is going to have more time to grow. So that's really going to make a change. And now if we see if you worked until 65, how does that look? Need of 1.3, 1.35. You're going to have about 1.2. You've got a 20-year retirement. You're into your 80s now. I think that looks like a whole lot nicer than that first scenario. What about you?
I would agree.
Okay. So these are the things, and like Alecia mentioned, these are the little things that we can play with. We haven't actually done anything. We're stress testing different scenarios, different options, and different avenues that we can take. And we're not going to do everything in one foul swoop. We're going to start with moving our investments potentially and getting them earning a little bit more. We're going to start with having a little bit more going into savings. We can determine those needs because they're constantly going to change. You could come into an inheritance. You could come into some lottery winnings. Your situation could change. You could sell your home. And that's another thing. Do you and Tony plan on being in the house that you guys are in when you retire?
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe so. If you didn't, let's refresh all this. We're gonna refresh, get everything right back to square one. And we're gonna say, well, that home that you have right now, it's worth $650. But the value of real estate at the retirement age, assuming the appreciation rate that we talked about in video 1 of 5%, it's crazy to think that house you're in that's worth $650 today, 20 years from now, could be worth up to $2.2 million if things stay the same at around 5%. We know right now, in Goddard especially, real estate's growing at much more than 5% per year, but lifetime average, we figured was 5%. So if you decided that, hey, we're going to sell the house, we're going to live in a van down by the river, because that used to be like a negative thing, but now it's a positive thing. Let's say we sell that house and we calculate that in. Well, now you've got 3.4 million, you've got a 50-year retirement. Now you can budget for rent if you were to rent a condo or an apartment, or if you wanted to spend winters in Florida or Arizona or wherever a lot of our snowbirds, as we call them, where they tend to go in the winter months. These are the different options and things that we can look at. But without knowing what your house is worth today and talking about annual appreciation rate, we would never know that, oh my goodness, my house might actually be worth that much money 20 years from now.
Right.
Pretty sure
Speaking
when
my language.
okay, now we're talking, because I know the house that I just purchased and I'm living in now, there is no chance they spent anything close to that when they bought that house, back 25, 30 years ago, right? So we know that these things are happening, but now we've got some power, we've got some strength behind it. Yes. So Alecia and I, we're going to dig into this a little bit more and we're going to make some decisions. But overall, feeling a little bit better from current path to potential path if we make a few changes.
Definitely. And I also appreciate you saying, selling your house, because there probably will come a time when Tony and I don't want or need something as big as what we're currently in. Mm-hmm. So, I saw it with my grandparents. I've seen it with my parents. They've downsized into something smaller. Mm-hmm. So that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. So even if you took the 2.2 that you would spend to sell that house, and we know that you've got lots of years in this retirement, we could actually see, okay, well, what's that going to do? We could spend, at that point, probably it's a minimum of $1 million to get into something else. If we take $1 million out of that equation, we know we're still in really good shape.
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to remove that. The last thing we're going to touch on here before we move on is how we come up with these numbers. So how do we know 7 years and how do we know 20 years?
Right.
When we click on the view report, it's going to show where our money's coming from. Now, this is completely without planning for old age security and Canada pension. Two things that, Tony's been paying into with his employer. Whether you do as self-employed, that's a different story. But we want to plan, okay, based on what we know is going to be there. CPP, OAS, we're hoping it's going to be there when we go to retire. If I was doing this with somebody that was, 62 and was already collecting that, of course, we're going to plan for it. We don't know what those numbers are going to be, so we don't want to make any assumptions. We want to know, based on what we're doing, we're going to be looked after. If that money was there additionally, it's only going to be icing and it's going to make the situation even easier. But What we can see is when you retire in 2048, I don't want you to get too stressed about that year. Reality though, at 65, Tony would be 67. So it would show this is how much is going to be in the pot. Okay, we're going to need to withdraw this much out. How much money is that money that's left over going to make? It's going to make $35,000 in interest. And then how much is going to be left over? So we can actually go through it line by line and see how that asset decreases and how we come up with, we're not just throwing this number divided by this. No, it's the math is all done in the background. And this is how we figure out, okay, by age 84, there's 100,000 left. And that's it. That's all. So, obviously changes will be made along the way and whatever else, but this just gives us a little bit of a map to where that money goes and how long it would take. And this is where people start to figure out, oh, well, if we did do the other situation where there was $2 million there, we had that extra, it gives you confidence to gift those things to Birdie, like you had talked about in video 2, paying for schooling, helping her buy her first home, buying a vehicle. If she wants to follow in your footsteps as an entrepreneur and start her own business, maybe giving her a little bit of a boost to do that. This is how we really start to gain that power and see, does it make sense for us to do that? Not just doing it and dealing with the repercussions after.
Amazing.
Last thing we're going to do today is we are going to look at your daily spending. So we're going to go into the financial planning. We're going to look at your budget. We already figured out what Alecia and Tony's budgets are for these categories. Now we can see what she's done. So Alecia, how does that look? How's that been feeling? You've been logging your spending, where you go to dinner, where you get your groceries. Where are you at? How you feeling?
I love it. And I went to Kate's today and I grabbed a latte and lunch and I haven't logged it yet. So do you want to?
So let's do that quick then, and then we'll go over things.
Awesome. Let me just show you how easy it is to do this. Okay, awesome. So it was my spend. And would you say that would be entertainment?
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where you've been logging your takeout and different things already. So let's keep that consistent.
Yeah.
And
So
then where it
great.
is, there we
Awesome.
go. It'll be there.
And then it was 16.32, and it was latte and lunch.
Great.
Submit.
Awesome. So Alicia's already been going through and doing all of this logging. So we've already got a really good idea of where that spending has been going. So we can see in entertainment, for instance, they budgeted for $500. So far this month, they've spent 240, 277.40, and they have 222 left over. Gas, 200, 115. So you can really do that quick check-in if you're keeping this up to date, or you went in and said, okay, there's 1 week left in January. Let's go in on Monday, the 24th, and you logged everything for the month. You could do it that way too. You don't have to do it every single day. But this way, this gives you a really good feeling that, okay, there's a week left in the month. We are under budget in entertainment. Awesome. We are under budget in gas. We're not allowed to go anywhere. We're under budget in groceries. You knew December was a higher month, but this is starting to give you that feel. Okay, well, the fridge is empty and I need to go, so it doesn't really matter. And then you know that you're over budget in miscellaneous. So it's like, okay, maybe we don't need to buy that piece of clothing uptown, or we don't need to, get that item for the house that we wanted, that, new wall hanging or whatever it may be. But where I come in is I start to look at this and I can say, okay, based on what you're doing, this is where we're at. And what I like to really see is people start to get upset with groceries first and foremost. We all need to eat, and we know how expensive it's getting. So I click on this little chart here, and it'll show you a full breakdown of where you've been going this month. So predominantly Zehrs, a little bit at Food Basics, some at Shanahan's, decent amount at Walmart, and it looks like Maitland. Well, what's Maitland? So we can click here, and this gives us a full breakdown. Oh, the Maitland market, right. So we can see where that money is going. It can give you a feel if you're over budget consistently for months on months on months, and we see that you're predominantly spending at Zehrs, maybe there's some cost savings by going to Food Basics one extra trip a month, or going to Walmart or whatever it may be, or just being a little bit more cautious and maybe doing a little bit more flyer hunting or whatever you can do that way. So this is a really great way that now that you have the data and you've put the information in, we can start to see that breakdown. Same with entertainment. Alecia, Kate's Cafe, West Street Willie's, Part 2 Bistro, all these different local places, which I know you're a huge advocate for local, just like I am. So it makes sense that this is what yours looks like. But a lot of the time for me, especially, and I know of families that I've talked to, they look at this and they're like, I don't remember going to Wing Hong. When did we spend $87 at Wing Hong? Well, if you are detailed in this, oh, we got a bunch of takeout when we were watching football on Sunday. Whatever it was, it doesn't matter what the occasion was, it's going to trigger that and be like, oh, right, that's what we did. So by having it there, it's a lot easier when it's here to figure that out than just a month or two later seeing it on your credit card statement and being like, I don't remember eating there. Then you call MasterCard and you dispute the payment and they're like, no, sir or ma'am, we have footage of you going into Wing Hong and coming out with 3 bags of takeout. So any questions or thoughts on that, Alecia, now that you've had the month of logging and seeing things? I know you had mentioned to me in an email that you were curious about the miscellaneous and having to go over. We can see that you've gone over by $20, but it's really not a major issue because you're under budget in other areas. So we still know that you're unbudgeted and your remaining spend for this month is still a decent amount. So what are your thoughts on that?
Again, just really easy. Great to be able to see it. I know that with Tony and I, one of our biggest challenges is the grocery store because I have so many food allergies. So typically the things that I'm purchasing that would be considered essentials like bread and milk are really expensive. So a loaf of bread for me is $8. That's bananas, but that's my reality. So that was really helpful. And I also appreciate that you said, there's ways that you can bring that down a little bit. And we have been checking the flyers more often. And we have about putting together meal plans before I go to the grocery store. So I'm not just buying random items coming home and being like, oh, okay, well, what are we going to make today? I know exactly what I'm going to be making, when we're going to have leftovers, and that sort of thing. So that's been great. Again, just to be able to see it.
I like that. I like that. Well, that's great feedback, and that is pretty consistent with what I see with dealing with a lot of different families. And we know that, okay, some months we're going to go over in other categories. Okay, well, what do we have? Well, we went to something irresistible. Alicia knows she has that shopping habit, but A, she's doing it locally, and B, she told me it was something that she needed. I'm pretty sure we look at it. Oh, right, you bought a scarf and gloves. Well, kind of necessary right now with
It's
this
cold.
winter. Yeah, it's cold. So you need it, right? And again, it's within your means. So it feels a little bit better. It's a little bit more guilt-free when you know that it is within the budget. And I think you had said it was something on the weekend. So I think it was this Canadian Tire one that put you over. Well, you told me that you bought a shovel, right? Yeah, you bought a shovel, new shovel. That's listed right there. Well, that is an essential item because you need to get your car to your driveway so you can go to work and earn money to power your success plan and have all the money for these different areas. So this is what we start to see. We get some consistency, we build the good habits, but it's really going to help that if, let's say, instead of miscellaneous, you were over budget in entertainment. Let's say you were already at $600 and there was a week left. Do you think your thought process on maybe getting some takeout, or if it was a normal month going out to dinner, would be a little bit different if you already knew that?
So here's what everybody should know about me. I love a good challenge, and I love, I'm all in. So if I say that I'm going to budget, I'm going all in. And if I'm over budget or I'm getting close to being over budget, I will not be spending. There will be a spending freeze in whatever category that category is, which is why you received that email from me, because really the old Alecia would have been like, oh, an extra $20, no big whoop. But in the grand scheme of things, that extra $20 that I spent could make or break if it adds up over time, that extra $20. So that's what's so great about this is we're able to catch it. Mm-hmm. And like you said, I was able to do some adjusting in other categories, which helped balance everything out. So
every month is going to be different. Every month is going to be completely different. And like you said, you're all in, but realistically, like time wise, what does all in equate to? How much time do you figure you spent logging your spending?
Literally. So I am more the type of person that doesn't do it daily. So I'm not logging in daily. I'm doing it weekly, but it was.
See, but you knew we had our meeting, so you went in and did it all. And then that's why we added Kate's, right?
All in, yes. But all in all, 15 minutes, like max out of an entire week. That's how quickly I'm able to plug everything in.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you can see everything in one place. And I think that's really going to resonate once you do this for a few more months.
I do really like to see things. I like to see them. I like my money right where I can see it, typically hanging in my closet. Name that show turned into movie. That's one of my favorite quotes because it's very true to myself.
There we go.
But again, I love that this program is so user-friendly, but you can actually see everything. And like we did today, and we've done in different episodes as well, just being able to play with those numbers to see what will work best for me, us, Tony and I, and Birdie, because everybody is so different and their financial situation is so different. And like you said, what the other great thing is, as you continue to get older, typically what that means for you in life is that in your career, you're advancing. So that could mean some raises. So that could really change some things for you. Any of the above. So yeah, I love that we can see everything, that we can run different scenarios and figure out what's going to work best for us. And at the end of the day, it's really hard to think about retirement, but also living your life. This allows you to do both. Like you can do both.
Yeah, I think that was a quote that we had talked about, was you kind of live between needing to save for retirement, but also like you only live once.
Yeah.
So we got to find that balance, right? We got to find that, we got to be able to still make time, money, and energy for the things that power us through, with still having that in the back of our mind that, okay, we are still saving for retirement. It takes away that guilt free, or it takes away that guilt when you go to do those types of things. So that summarizes what we would do in a typical meeting, over our 3 episodes that we did. I can't thank Alecia enough, and the Digital Main Street program, for allowing us to do something like this, and put it out there for viewers to see. This would all take place generally over 2 quick meetings. I would do a quick visit. We would get together, as Alecia and I did. We gathered up a bunch of her financial information. We input it into the system. I come back a week later, show her all those details as we did in episode 2. And then around a month, 2 months later, we would meet again and see how are things progressing? How are you feeling? And we may have, done this for a little video series and made up some of the answers, but all of Alicia's responses are genuine, and they are echoed of what I do hear from a lot of the families and people that I work with. So can't thank you enough, Alecia. Thank you so, so much. Any closing comments before we go? Anything you want to plug for Digital Main Street there?
Well, again, if you're a small business and you are looking for support with your digital needs, reach out. You can head to the economic development page through the county, and you can find 3 of us there through the Digital Main Street program. And we cover the county. It's a free service, and we, of course, would love to help. And I need to say, Ralph, like, this has been a real eye-opening experience for me. Like Ralph said, my reactions were completely unrehearsed and true. There was no meetings before the meeting, so I didn't know what was happening. And this has been, although the numbers are fudged and they aren't my true numbers, it's been a really eye-opening experience for me. And what I'm looking forward to is working with Ralph in the future to really get my finances in check. So for anybody who is looking to work on their finances, we talked about this in episode 2. If you're like me and you don't have a pension, this can be a really important exercise for you, to make sure that you're prepared for retirement at 65 instead of 80.
That's right. And it's not as bad 65 to 60. So you're right. You're completely right there. And I think that is, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise that awareness. The more information that you have, the more power that you have, and the more you can make those little tweaks. And that's what it all comes down to. It comes down to that wellness piece. Takes away from a lot of the other things that the other stressors that we have in life. So if we can make that a little bit more stress-free, that's what I want to do. I want to make sure families are protected. I want them to know where their money's coming from, where it's going, and what we can really do to maximize that income. And if there's things that I can add along the way, that's what we're going to do. And it's exactly how we're going to implement it. As Alecia said, her and I are going to dig in a little bit deeper to her own. So that will be the end of Birdie and Tony. But if there is anything in particular, based on what you've seen in our videos, that you want to see, Alecia has already agreed that she would hop on. We can do future videos. I have another demo account that I use, and we can play around with some different scenarios. A lot of people have questions, and when you see more of this, that's where those questions come up. And I would love to help in any way that we can. And I look forward to working with you again soon, Alecia.
Awesome. Me too, Ralph. And we need to mention one more thing. Like in episode 1 and 2, you have a chance to win a gift card to a local business. We have a little, it's like a series turned movie quote.
Go back, and if you didn't catch it, see where we dropped a little quote there on you. And if you find out where that is, we'll put the parameters of that contest in, and we'll get you a gift card to support one of those local businesses, just like Alecia, Tony, and Birdie did in their success plan. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ralph.